All right, now we're going to start getting into digital photography and a little bit of the workflow that is required for digital photography. Keep in mind that we use probably Lightroom for this, but I want to show you that Photoshop is just as powerful as Lightroom. But the only bad thing is with Lightroom, you can do a large mass of pictures, where Photoshop, you're doing them one at a time. Okay? So, what I've included in the lesson files is some NEFs, some JPEGs, and some CR2s. And there's probably going to be more in here, and they're probably going to be in a folder by the time I'm done. So search around inside your lesson files until you get where there's a list of JPEGs, NEFs, and CR2s. And what I mean by that is they have this extension, just in case you're new to extensions. So I shot these. Some are underexposed, some are overexposed, and few are perfect because I want you to start kind of learning how to repair overexposed, repair underexposed shots. So if I'm in here and I open this with Photoshop CS5, the NEF file you might find opens a little differently than the normal document that you're used to. It opens in this, and this is your camera raw processing unit. Okay, so what'll happen is you have the power to process film, digital film, um, just kind of like how you did when you processed older film in the past. I can adjust exposure based upon how long I keep them under the lamp. You know, this it, this is a lot of science behind this, and this is a very powerful thing that we have as digital photographers nowadays. Keep in mind it's kind of bad etiquette to repair things after the fact too with digital photography, because you want to keep it so when you shoot an image, it's perfect to begin with, so you don't have to go into this every time. So what happens here is there is a histogram, and this histogram tells a lot about the photo. If I click up here at the histogram, it tells me all these pixels here in white are so overexposed that there is no pixels there to begin with. So if I went to print these would be printing white. Okay? On white paper, that would look awful. On this side is your blacks. So in this case, it is overexposed because it's over here. And what'll happen is, if it was perfectly exposed, it would be a bell curve. Now, perfectly exposed is kind of boring, however. So sometimes I'll shoot something overexposed, only the fact that I can push back the histogram using exposure. Okay? And what happens then is I get all these vivid whites in the background, and these are backlighting the flowers. So it's kind of boring to have perfectly exposed. Sure, it's good etiquette to have perfectly exposed, but as a digital photographer, you want to play around, because that's what happens. You have the ability to play around a great deal because film is free now. It doesn't cost you anything, but time. It costs you time. Okay, so as you can see, there's a great deal of detail in the shot. There's a little tiny spider, and there's a fly. And in these shots, the one thing about this is, in Photoshop, I would have to change a lot of things. I would have to go image adjustments, exposure, and I would have to wait for that to process. Image adjustment levels, wait for that to process. Here, everything processes real time. So if I slide this over, it's sliding it over in real time, and I can see it real time in the preview. That's the difference between, just editing this in Photoshop and editing it in here. So you want to do a great deal of things in this before you get into the Photoshop. So, that being said, that you could change a lot of this stuff, and it takes a great deal of time to kind of go in here and manipulate all this stuff. But I want to show you some certain things that we change all the time. It looks like this is lagging just a little bit, so we'll give it a second. Most powerful computer I know, and anytime I capture video, the new Photoshop is 64-bit, So what happens is I think it shares a little bit more on the video card now. So here's sharpening. Sharpening, I can sharpen it after the fact, and keep in mind with camera raw images, you have to sharpen after the fact. There is a brief sharpening period within the camera, but it's so brief that it doesn't do it justice. I'm starting to get this grain in here. With huge megapixels, don't be afraid of grain. Grain is actually a good thing. So when I get into like the 20 megapixel range or this, 18 megapixel range, and I start to have grain in here, grain actually supports a good print. So you should always kind of use grain and embrace it a little bit. This is a shot at 800 ISO, so you're going to get some grain in here. The larger the ISO, the larger the film speed, and the more grain appears in your shot. It allows you to shoot shots in almost like darkness at level ISO like 4000 or something like that. You can really take some good shots in the dark. So there's going to be a lot of grain. So I always kind of mess around with clarity and vibrance. You're going to find clarity and vibrance work really good with sky pictures. So take a picture of the sky, rank up clarity, and you'll find that all the clouds are appearing there. Some of the clouds that might have been gone before because it was too overexposed now appear. I can show you what every one of these do, but trust me in the fact that it would bore you to tears, and the fact that I want you to start experimenting with these. There is no right or wrong answer. All I'm going to say is you should stay away from overblown pixels. So anytime that you want to check out to see if it's too overexposed at some time. If you do a color tweak, you might have to also do an exposure tweak just to kind of get that back. Okay. Some photos you can't save. So just get over the fact that, some you're just going to have to walk on by and go to the next one. But as I said, film's free nowadays. So this is a very interesting thing. Please go on to the next video where I can show you more about this.